I'm Tasmelis of The Starters.
This is Ben Golliver with the Open Floor Podcast.
Hi, I'm Kristen Ludlow from NBA Inside Stuff.
I'm OG Anunoby of the Toronto Raptors.
Hey, I'm Elena Donan, and welcome to the Double Clutch.
Double Clutch.
Double Clutch
Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Double Clutch Podcast. My name's Mike Miller and I'm here with a very special guest for you today. It's a man who is an NBA analyst for Sky Sports, a BBL legend, captaining the Sheffield Sharks for, well, you've been there now for about 10 years, and you captained England at the 2018 Commonwealth Games. It's Mike Tuck.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming on. I appreciate you sparing some time to talk to us today and to talk all things NBA, which, it's hardly a chore, is it?
No, it's good. I mean, it's obviously I've got a lot going on with basketball myself, but I'm always a big fan of the NBA. Love talking basketball. And thank you for all those kind words you just said. I really appreciate it.
No worries. Quick bit of housekeeping at the start. If you're not already following us, make sure you go to @DoubleClutchUK on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and hit that follow button. If you've got any questions, any feedback, anything like that, you can hit us up at admin@doubleclutch.uk. If you're not already following Mike, it's @MikeTuck15 on Twitter and Instagram. Let's jump straight in then. Obviously, you mentioned you're very busy. The NBA season has just started itself. So let's get into some surprising starts. We've had a lot of listener questions. Thank you very much to everyone who's submitted questions. The first one, did you ever think you would see a day where the Suns led the league in net rating and the Warriors were bottom?
It's that's a funny one, and also like pretty crazy when you think about it. The Phoenix Suns obviously traditionally over the last couple of years have just struggled, and the Warriors just being such a powerhouse. But the NBA and most leagues are peaks and valleys, right? Like,
yeah.
When did you think the Clippers were going to be one of the strongest teams in the league? You looked at them like 10 years ago and they were, just at the bottom. And even for me as a Raptors fan, we've had some hard hitting years being Raptors fans. And then all of a sudden within one season, you turn around and we're NBA champions. So it's professional sports, right? Anything can happen. And, I'm not a huge Warriors guy, so it's kind of nice. And I think for a few people, it's kind of nice to see them struggle a little bit early on here. And then, for the Phoenix Suns, an organization that's just hasn't been able to find a rhythm or get anything going in its direction. It's nice that they've kind of come out with a strong start and, with a couple of big wins as well.
Yeah, I think they could have a couple more as well, the way they've been playing. And the situation with them being near the top in terms of net rating, the Warriors being at the bottom, it kind of feels like it's 12 years ago and Steve Nash is on the floor. Not in terms of what they look like on the floor, just in terms of where they're positioned in the league right now. But of course, it is early days and they've already gone through a significant amount of drama. After the first opening game, big win, DeAndre Ayton banned for 25 games for the use of a diuretic. It's a bit of an interesting situation for them to find themselves in. Obviously, he's coming into his second year. Didn't have the greatest first rookie season. Looked a lot better in the first game, which I'm not sure how much I should say without as if it's going to make a difference. But he had a much better first game. And now he's out for 25 games with the obviously the infringement of the anti-drugs policy. He's pleaded the sort of "I didn't know I put it in my body" argument. And as an athlete, is that what's your thoughts on that entire spin, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, when you're a professional athlete and you're playing in a top level league, and you've got to. You've got to watch out. You got to watch out what's going on. You got to make sure that whatever supplements you're taking, protein powders, whatever, etc., are checked out and that they're certified. And even us in the BBL, the Sharks, for example, are constantly telling us to make sure that any kind of outside things that we're taking, even if it's like ibuprofen and stuff like that, because there's certain Americans will bring over certain over-the-counter stuff, and it might not be certified over here. So I think even there was a player in the BBL years ago, I think, that was taking Lemsip, and at the time Lemsip had some drug in it that was on the banned substance list, so he got a few games banned. So it's a situation where you got to be extremely careful, and when you're in the NBA, it's at a whole nother level. Millions of dollars at stake. You've got access to some of the best nutritionists and trainers and all the rest. So a diuretic in your system, I don't know. That's a flushing agent. I don't know. I'm not going to get too much into it, but
yeah,
just I don't know. I know I said off air. I think this might kind of be a blessing for them. Obviously, Ayton coming into his second season, his first season wasn't great, and I think there was a lot of growing pains going on there, especially between him and Booker. I think these 25 games will be good. I think it'll put a lot more pressure on Booker's shoulders. But I think Booker's the type of guy that enjoys that pressure. I think he likes to step up to a challenge. And I think he'll get more chances and more touches and just more opportunity to operate with the ball and be the leader and the superstar that he can be for that team.
Yeah, I said on last week's pod that I was optimistic for the Suns this season. And a large part of that for me is the addition of Ricky Rubio, who defensively is a step above anything they've had in recent years. And then on the offensive end is just the perfect guy for setting up Booker and everyone else. And it's just the way he's controlled the game so far. I know he missed one of them with a knee contusion, but he just seems the kind of ideal backcourt pairing for Booker, who is obviously a guy who wants the ball in his hands and is going to put up a lot of shots. How important do you think Rubio is going to play in terms of his role in Phoenix this year?
I completely agree. I think that was a perfect pickup for them. Rubio, obviously a very experienced pass-first point guard, which is what they need. It gets the ball out of Booker's hands a little bit more and doesn't have him bringing the ball up the floor as much. Gets him coming off screens and playing off the ball, and Rubio is, that pass first guy that he is looking to set you up. And Rubio's come out with a great start. He almost had a triple double last night. He had 10 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists. I think he's going to be great for that team. The experience that he has throughout the league, coming into the league at a very young age and being a starting point guard for so many years now, he's going to be able to take this kind of this oddball group that they have there and hopefully help them, get together and put something together this season.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's go look at the other side of that question now. The Warriors being at the bottom. You mentioned that you kind of enjoyed that. You weren't a big fan of the Warriors. I think you should go into that a little bit more.
Well, no, I mean, I was a fan of the Warriors when they first started out, and then it was just when Durant went there, it was just kind of like, come on,
yeah, this
isn't fair. But it's not to say that I hate the Warriors. Big fan of Stephen Curry. But now we see them, and it's obviously we're 1 weekend, like they played like 3 games or whatever. Like it's you can't pick up too much off this, but. Mm-hmm. It is kind of interesting to see what I would probably call the hangover starring Steph Curry. They've had all these successful seasons and all these playoff runs, and they've probably played an entire extra season on top of the 5 or 6 last seasons. They probably, with all the postseasons up, they played it. So that whole load and everything, takes its toll on you, physically and mentally. It's just interesting to see this. You would never think that a team that was in the NBA Finals last year would come out and just, start the season with 2 blowouts to the Clippers and to the OKC. Obviously they picked up that win against the Pelicans, who, the Pelicans, it's a step in the right direction, but that was a game that they should have won. I think the biggest thing they're lacking right now is size. They've got Kevon Looney and Willie Cauley-Stein are both out right now with injuries. So once they get those 2 guys back in the mix, it'll be interesting to see how Willie Cauley-Stein really fits in with them. Kevon Looney I thought was great for them last year, just a solid role player, and I think with that experience that he got last year, he'll grow and get into a better player this year. They've got a great organization. They got a great coach. I think the biggest thing for them is just going to have to deal with accepting that they're not going to be as good as they were, and learning how to get better. And it's also like you look at the fans. Like it looked like some of this. I saw some pictures on social media. The stands were like almost empty, and obviously they've moved from Oakland over across the bay into San Francisco, so that's going to be a little bit of a transition for them. But that's the thing about when you have successful teams over multiple years, the fans get used to that. And as soon as you don't have that, you're going to have these fair weather fans that are only going to show up when things are going the right way. So it's going to be a big transition, and definitely a big mentally for them is, can they override that and stick through these tough times?
Yeah, it's an interesting point about the fans there, because even before this Warriors team exploded, they still had one of the most devout fan bases in the NBA. And, the Roracle was, I think I remember being there in like 2011, and it was just a rubbish nothing game against the Timberwolves. I say rubbish nothing game. Don't get me wrong. I love going to NBA games. I'm not turning that down at any opportunity. And the place was packed, and it was loud, and it was noisy. I think it was actually the night that Kevin Love's double streak was broken. But, there was no expectations of them at that point, and they still had this amazing support. And now they're obviously they've transplanted to a different part of across the bay, as you say, and there's a disconnect there. I think at this point, they still it's a new fan base to a significant degree in my perspective.
Yeah.
So that's going to be an interesting adjustment for them. Of course, they've still got 3 All-Stars, so I don't know how much slack we can cut them. I get that there's 9 new guys there and a handful of rookies. I think there's 3 rookies, so there is going to be adjustment. But I'm just going to quickly spin this because we're going to play a game as we go through this. I've got a couple of things to throw at you, where I'm going to throw. It's overreaction season. We've played 3-4 games, and people are going mad. So an overreaction that these are all things I've heard, not necessarily things I've said, and I want you to grade these 1 to 10. So this is something I heard. The Warriors are the worst team in basketball.
Oh, that is definitely an overreaction.
Is that close to a 10?
No, yeah. In terms of overreaction, I'd probably put that at 9. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's fair. I think there's, you've got to temper your expectations with them this year. They are not the super team that Bleacher Report did that amazing video of a couple of years back.
Yeah.
They're still going to be good.
And you got to remember Clay is sitting on the bench too. And I know he's supposed to be out for quite a while, but potentially back this season. So he's a dangerous player out there.
Absolutely. And I'm hopeful. Obviously, I have no medical experience, but I'm expectant that the way he plays, he's not necessarily the athletic, explosive kind of guy. He's able to contribute significantly on minimal dribbles and touches. He's the kind of guy who I think this kind of injury might not have the same level of impact as it might do for someone who is more reliant on their athleticism.
100%.
So I'm absolutely hopeful that this guy's going to come back and be the Clay that we've all gotten used to and love watching play. A second overreaction statement for you is based on the first question. The Suns are a playoff team.
I think that's an overreaction as well. I think the West. Okay. I think the West is just too stacked up. There's just too many teams in the West this year. I think the Suns will make strides in the right direction this year. Like you said, with Rubio there and Oubre and Baines and, all these new guys, I think they'll make steps in the right direction, but I don't see them making the playoffs. So I'll probably say that's overreaction by 8.
8. Oh, wow. These are real overreactions. Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Next listener question. In fact, it wasn't a listener. It's one of my co-hosts, Tom Hall. After watching the first week, are there any new teams that you think could sneak into the playoffs?
Yeah. I love how the Timberwolves have started. Really impressive start. And I don't think don't think anyone except for maybe a few people in Minnesota would have guessed that they'd be number one in the league right now, with a perfect start. I think that Karl Anthony Towns, Big Cat is a driving force behind all this. He's really come into this league with a chip on his shoulder. I believe he's averaging like 32 points and 13 rebounds, 5 assists. So just absolutely monster numbers. Wiggins is out there contributing as well. 20-point games and that. I think that if he can stay locked in and stay focused throughout the whole season, I think he'll give them a really good chance. I think that all the drama that they went through last season, I think with Jimmy Butler and all that, just too much added pressure on them. I think now that Cat has all that out of the way, Cat can just operate, and Wiggins can sign his big contract, so hopefully he can just get more comfortable and start to operate. So I like them early on. Another team that in the West that I didn't think were going to be as good as they looked early on here is the Lakers. I always had them as a playoff team, and I knew they were going to be good, but I was just really impressed with the way they've started the season. And, I think that they're starting to gel a lot quicker than I thought they would. And I was also impressed with Dwight Howard. I think, Dwight Howard has been, a guy that's, struggled throughout the years and bounced around a lot. And I think a lot of the game is in his head, cause he's got so much ability. And I think we're starting to get a little taste of what, Dwight could be. And he's got a guy like LeBron that is a good leader and can help bring him along a little bit.
One of the things that Howard struggled with is the adjustment from being a superstar to a role player.
Yeah.
From an athlete's perspective, how difficult is it to transition from being what you want? We all age, obviously, and our physical skills diminish. Is there sort of, from your perspective, have you ever gone through something similar where you've had to adjust what you thought your role was going to be, and how have you handled that?
I think in my career, there was a point where I was the main gun, and then obviously as the years go on, I've had to accept a lesser role, and coming off the bench and more transitioning into a leader and a vocal guy. Instead of, being the go-to guy. And it just, for me, it just kind of, I set myself up mentally. Like I knew it was coming. I could tell I'm getting older. I knew I had a good club behind me that I knew they weren't going to, just quickly get rid of me or anything like that. I was kind of part of the fabric. So it kind of let me mentally be comfortable in my skin and in my position. But I think for most guys who, especially when you're on that level, it's a hit to your ego. And you gotta be able to, check your ego at the door sometimes. And if it's all about, if you want to win, if you want to win, it's all about sacrifice. Not everybody's going to be able to get the shots that they want every time down the floor. You're going to have to sacrifice. You're going to have to share the ball. And maybe I think that might've been what Dwight struggled with. And just getting traded around and all that probably really took a hit to his ego. But I think now he's in a situation where I think LeBron is a good leader and a guy that will, he's not a guy. LeBron won't be the guy that's going to shun him or bark at him. LeBron's going to be like, come on, come with me and let's go. Let's go get this. But yeah, the Lakers are an interesting team. And they started out a lot better than I thought they would. Another sneaky team, just moving to the other side, the East, the Hawks. The Hawks look all right, starting off, and Trae Young is just absolutely on fire.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, just putting up crazy numbers. I think 38 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds. East Coast Player of the Week. 1-2 big games. The one game they lost was to Philly, and they only lost by 2 points.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of positives to take away from this. And they're another team that kind of surprised me because I did not see that coming. Obviously, these are, like you said, overreactions in the first week here. But the Hawks look like they're going to be a team to follow this year.
Yeah, they do look good, and John Collins just scares me. Some of the things he's able to do, just flies. It's just amazing. Trae Young, I was a huge Luka fan last season in the Trae versus Luka debate.
Yeah,
and watching him this year, he's just stepped it up again. He's just so far. Shooters shoot, and he could go cold. But right now, some of the shots, I think a couple of games ago, he was 2 shots from the logo.
Yeah.
It just pulled up.
Literally one dribble over half. I saw that shot. Just like the confidence that he exudes, like just no hesitation of pulling up and shooting that shot.
Yeah.
That's a sign of confidence and a good player.
It's fantastic. Yeah, well, we're going to get onto them a bit more later, I think. So let's just quickly flip and look at some rookies. We had a question from UK Raptor fan. How do you think Zion's rookie season will go? Do you think he's going to live up to the hype or spend a lot of time injured? And obviously he's out now with the having the surgically repaired meniscus heel. What do you see in the future this season for Zion?
Yeah, shout out to UK Raptor fan. Love to see more Raptor fans out here in the UK. I know we're thin and far between, so shout out to him, and great question.
Speaking of Raptor, sorry, just to interrupt. Did you see last year during the finals, someone had, I think they chalked something to do with the Raptors on a pavement, like a busy crossing in Scotland somewhere. There are Raptor fans in the UK who made their presence known during the finals last year, but I can't remember the exact what had happened, but I think there was a huge Raptors logo or something just at one of the sort of the big crossings in one of the big Scottish cities. I realise that's a bit of a meandering story, but
I'll have to find that tweet. I'd love to see that.
Yeah. So how do you think Zion's rookie season is going to go?
Yeah, so I was a bit of a skeptic before the preseason started. I wasn't sure how he was going to adjust into this league. Obviously, bigger, more physical league. And then preseason started. And after that preseason, I was a believer. He just came out and did what he was supposed to do. He didn't shoot bad shots. Most of his shots were obviously majority in the paint or, catching lobs. He's shooting high percentage shots, but he was shooting high percentages every game. And he was letting the ball come to him. He was shooting good threes. Obviously he's got to work on his handles a little bit, but he did not look out of place out there. And, to be honest, he looks like a man child out there. He's got the NBA body ready to go. My only concern with Zion is this going to be like a Greg Oden scenario? He's already, he's 1 year after 1 year out of high school and college, he has he has a major injury. Then he heads into the NBA. He's already got a major injury before the season even starts. Simple science is telling me that I think he weighs too much. He's the second heaviest player in the NBA after Boban.
Which, given the height differential, is just...
Yeah, Boban's like 8'11", and Zion's like my height, like 6'6", 6'7". So he weighs 285 pounds. So I mean that's just like physics. Like you're putting that much weight on those muscles, it's not going to be good. So I know Charles Barkley has already alluded to this and saying that he's got to drop the weight. And Charles Barkley would be the one to tell him that, because Charles Barkley was a guy similar to him, like very big, powerful guy when he came into the league, and then learned that towards the end of his career that he just had to slim down to stay in the league and keep out of injuries. So I think that's going to be the big thing is, can Zion slim down, take off 10, maybe 20 pounds, and still be super athletic, but maybe not as powerful, but they won't take his toll on the muscles as bad as it would.
Sure. I mean, it's an interesting position, and one that GM David Griffin sort of defended, saying, there are no questions about his what kind of shape he was in. But there has to be, if you're putting extra pounds of weight through joints, that is extra wear and tear that is not necessarily needed. And we saw guys like even LeBron and Carmelo 2-3 years back, where suddenly they dropped X amount of pounds in the summer because they realized that the key to longevity is minimizing impact. And when you're a guy as explosive as Zion and you weigh that much, that has to have a detrimental effect somewhere along the line. Do you reckon that he's able to do it in season? Obviously, we saw Draymond do it in season last year, where he's suddenly jumping to, health permitting, a much longer NBA season than he had college season? Or do you think there's a risk that he's in New Orleans and the food in New Orleans is pretty appetizing? Do you reckon there's a chance he actually goes the other way now he's just on the sideline in street clothes and getting to eat what he wants?
Oh, he'll be down there eating all that gumbo. No, I read something the other day from John Sally said it. John Sally's big vegan. He said that Zion had said that he was going to go vegan during his time out and during the surgery to help keep manage his weight leading up to the surgery and into the surgery and all that. So I think Zion knows what's at stake here, and I think he'll be able to commit to it. It's just the carrying through part and will it actually go down? But I think he's got a good circle around him, and I do think that he will slim down. But it's just I'm just skeptical after seeing one major injury in college and then a major injury before you even get to your first actual NBA game. So that's all I'm worried about.
Yeah, it sucks that that's the start he's had to his professional career. We had another question about rookies from the Grit and Grime podcast. Have the performances of any rookies surprised you so far this season?
Yeah. I think Tyler Hero from the Miami Heat has just come out all guns blazing. He's averaging 12 points, 6 rebounds. For a rookie, those are great numbers. I think in the preseason we really saw him. He just looks fearless out there. He's coming off screens, catching and shooting. He's got a really nice skill set and good footwork. He can get through the lane. He can get to the bucket, and he's a scorer. Like he's a catch and shoot scorer. He's got a great shot. He can shoot from pretty much anywhere on the floor. I really like the energy that he's brought into the season. Another guy that I really like is Kobe White on the Chicago Bulls. He was a guy that we picked a little bit further down in the draft, and we didn't really know what to see from him. But early on, he's already looking like one of the go-to guys for Chicago. And just the same thing. Great skill set. He's a creator. He's a scorer. Averaging 13 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists. So he's kind of doing it in every single category right now. Whether they'll continue to give him some big minutes to let him flourish a little bit, we'll see. But I think he's another guy to keep your eye on this season.
Yeah, he's been good so far. The first 2 games he had were fantastic. 17 with 7 assists in his debut, and 25, 6 and 2 in the next game. And then for some reason his minutes seems to have dropped since then in the subsequent 2 games. So it'd be interesting to see whether he can sustain, additional minutes, because, you can only do stuff in the time that you're given on the floor. And he looks like, again, overreaction because it was the first 2 games. He looked like he was doing something right in those first 2 games. Tyler Hero, one thing that stood out to me is just his off-the-ball movement, change of pace, change of direction, multiple times in a play. There was one specific one I'm thinking of, and he was running some kind of curl, but he went back and forth about 5 or 6 times and just was lulling the defense into a false sense of security with how much he was slowing down, and then he was just gone, curled, open. It was just it was great to see that kind of footwork and fundamentals essentially from a rookie. Anyone else jumping out for you?
I mean, obviously you got your we'll see what happens with Zion and Ja Morant, but another guy on Memphis that I really liked was Brandon Clark. I thought he's had some really good minutes for them. But if I had to go with anybody, definitely Hero and Kobe White.
Okay, here comes overreaction statement number 3. Ja Morant is greater than Kyrie Irving?
Oh, that's an overstatement. I'm gonna give that a 9.
That was one of my own observations, tongue in cheek, when I was watching the game the other day, and obviously, I was impressed that he hung with Kyrie in that matchup. Kyrie had 37-7 and 7 with 2 steals, and then Morant had 34 and 9, and then also had the at the end of regulation he had the block on Kyrie. But I just I obviously I was being sarcastic to a degree. But watching Morant play, I'm looking at this guy and thinking this Memphis team, as bad as they're going to be this year, have some real potential. The pairing of him and Jaren Jackson Jr. to me is like a 1-2 punch that, sure, there'll be some growing pains. There's a lot of young duos in the league at the minute where we're going through similar experiences, but in sort of 3-4 years, this could be a really, really good tandem.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Ja Morant. I think he's got so much potential, and I think the way he's entered the league, any rookie that can score 30 plus points in an NBA game, that is dangerous. And yeah, with him and Jackson, great 1-2 punch there. I think the athleticism from both of them is great, and if they can keep those guys and keep a core together for the next couple seasons, 2-3 years down the line, you're going to have a playoff team on your hands.
Yep, absolutely. Let's jump away from the rookies for a minute and let's have a quick chat about very early MVP candidates. Obviously, you mentioned the players of the week earlier: Trae Young, Karl Anthony Towns, Cat averaging 32, 13, 5. With 3 steals, Trae averaging 38.5, 7 rebounds, 9 assists, and 1.5 steals through the first week. Obviously, they jumped straight out. Basketball Reference have a MVP tracker, which is based on the tendencies of previous years' voting. So very early on, they've jumped straight to the top of the MVP rankings, which is a bit of a surprise. Is there anyone else this year who surprised you with their very early, and again overreaction, but their early MVP candidacy?
Luka Doncic, he's just coming off a rookie season, but already this guy he just looks insane. And I would put him up there in that top 5 for sure. Whereas last year he wasn't in there. I think a lot of it's going to come down to the success with how many wins are they going to pull out this season, and can they get to a playoff spot. But yeah, Luka is definitely my pick.
He's just incredible watching him play on the floor. It looks easy for him.
Yeah.
Coming into the league, there were questions about whether he was quick enough, strong enough, athletic enough. And I was watching him yesterday, I think, and he was just laughing the whole way through the game, just having fun, which is something you don't necessarily see anymore. No. And he's, he can hit from everywhere. He can fake people out of their shoes. Just, this guy is just seriously good. And I didn't, again, very early, 3-4 games in, didn't expect Dallas to be playing as well as they're playing, and that relationship and pairing with Kristaps Porzingis is scary.
Yeah, I really like them as a 1-2 punch. I was looking at a stat the other day for players under 21 years old. It was Jordan and Magic, and then Luka had passed them for most triple doubles for a player under 21 years old. So when you're in that type of company, it's just insane. But yeah, Porzingis going to Dallas is probably the best thing for Luka. Obviously, they're both European boys, and they've got games that kind of complement each other, and both can shoot the hell out of the ball. So the floor is just going to be absolutely spread out. Good thing. I think good things are going to happen down in Dallas, but again, they're in the West, and it, tough place to be. And can they pull out enough wins to get into a playoff spot?
We've mentioned a couple of times they're in the West. I'm one of these people who's, let's do away with the conferences. Where do you sort of sit in that argument?
I think I think it's a very, very interesting argument. I think, there's a lot of teams in the league that don't necessarily make the playoffs that probably should make the playoffs.
Sure.
At the same time, I think that's a huge step for them to make.
Yeah.
And, I've always been a big fan of East versus West. It's just like tradition and I'm kind of old school when it comes to that, but I think it's a great argument. It's just once you make a step in that direction, there's no really going back. And then are you going to lose certain fan bases, and are certain teams going to struggle because of that? If a team finishes, 30th every year and doesn't, a team's not going to make the playoffs, at least there's some teams that have a chance to make the playoffs coming out of the East that, particularly wouldn't, so, it's a tough one. Cause it's one of those ones when you pull the trigger, there's no going back, and it'll evolve the game and change the game.
Yeah. No, it would be a huge thing. I can't see it ever happening because, the board of governors, I think they'd need like a 75% majority, and some of the guys who would have to vote for it are the ones that would be, at least initially, most impacted by it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can't see it happening, but it's one of the things that I sit there going, come on now, last year's Kings should have been in the playoffs above the Pistons. This is silly now. But that's a debate I could have for about 3 hours, and I know that's not something we're going to do tonight. Another question from Jamstar2K. Do you think there's too much emphasis on the 3-point shot in today's game?
Ooh, that's a great question. It's become such a big part of the game in the last probably 5 to 10 years. I'd probably say that I used to hate it. And that's just me being old school, old man, too many threes. But
on that note, how many did you hit in Friday's game for the Sharks?
3, I think 3 or 4. I had a couple.
Okay.
I caught fire a little bit.
Yeah.
It's part of the evolution of the game. And I think that's the beauty of basketball, is that, we have this sport in front of us that it's, no matter what happens, it just keeps changing, and the league changes. And I think that's part of the beauty of it. I always look back to like when I was growing up or when I was in high school, and like no one was really doing step back shots. No one was really doing Euro steps. 3-pointers, you couldn't come down the break and just shoot a 3-pointer, or if, a guy was open and you hit him up the wing on a break and shoot it. You couldn't really do that, because the coach would like pull you out. But now it's becoming more and more accepted, and step back shots are in there, Euro steps are in there, and 3-point shots are in there. So when you look at the statistics, most teams now, the better shots are high percentage shots around the rim, so layups and dunks, or open 3-point shots. The mid-range game is the art of the mid-range shot is kind of slowly getting lost. It's still there, obviously, and it'll always be there. But typically in today's NBA, it's the team that shoots and makes more 3-point shots is going to win the game. And that's just, simple math. Like if I make more shots, if I make more baskets that are worth 3 points instead of 2 points, I'm going to win the game. So I can't say that I don't like it. I don't love it, but it's part of the game, and it's part of the evolution of the game. And it's crazy to watch now. You got, kids like Luka and Trae Young coming into the league, and some of these shots these guys are hitting now is just unbelievable. So who knows where it's going to go from here? Guys are just going to be like dribbling up to half court and just pulling up from there.
Yeah. Trae Young. It's crazy how, this movement has been driven by analytics and the maths behind it. I spoke with Kurt Goldsberry a few months back. His book Sprawl Ball had just come out, which essentially looks at how he's a geographer who's essentially mapped every shot since shot positions have been known in the NBA, and he sort of maps how the game has changed and how it's essentially predicting how it's going to continue to change to just be 3-point shots and how that can damage the game. And we see it now with kids who think they are of the same level as Steph or Trae Young or whomever, and start just jacking shots they shouldn't do. Do you think there is going to be sort of a negative side to this, or is there a negative side to it that you can see to a degree damaging the game?
Well, I mean, like I said, when I was coming up, if you hit a man on the break and he shot an open 3-pointer, make or miss it, the coach would sub him out and be like, "Well, don't ever shoot that shot ever again." Then it slowly became, if he makes it, it's a good shot. If he misses it, it's a bad shot. And now it's like, now it's kind of, guys are shooting those shots all the time. I've seen it. I've seen the transition of it in the BBL as well. So there's just, I think to a point, it could damage the game. But, I think right now we're in a good place where it's a healthy mix. But, yeah, it's interesting when you pull the analytics into it.
Do you think I'm just sticking on this one for a minute? Do you think that the way that defense is refereed differently has a bearing on this? And by that I mean how physical it is in the block compared to the lack of contact, or the how quick a whistle is called on contact out, on the perimeter. Do you think that is perhaps a driver of this? Whereas you don't have to get in the post and bang now for a point. You can be out on the 3-point line and the defense can't get away with as much contact, which is why we see someone like James Harden, who averages more free throw attempts than field goal attempts 9 times out of 10, because he's just out there and he's drawing those fouls. Do you think that's perhaps a driver behind the sort of the increase in threes as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think if there, 9 times out of 10, if you ask a guy, does he want to go bang in the block, or does he just want to float around and shoot shots? I think he's going to choose to shoot shots. I think, and that's another thing with the evolution of the league. You look at when there was a huge influx of Europeans coming into the league, and all of a sudden we had 7-footers shooting. You had Dirk and all those guys coming in, 7-footers shooting threes. So now there's no limitations on it like there was back in the day. Back in the day, it was much more militaristic, where you're a point guard, you pass. You're a shooting guard, you shoot. You're a 3-man, you slash. 4s and 5s, set screens and rebound. But now it's 1 through 5. You pass, you dribble, you shoot, and you shoot from anywhere. So I think that's been a big driver behind the 3-point shot as well, is that guards and bigs are now shooting threes. And, you can get that ticky-tack 3 call and go to the line a lot easier than you can if you got a back down a 7-footer in the post and bang against a guy who weighs 250 pounds.
Yeah, I think you're right. And 3 free throws are better than 2. Let's take a quick break to talk about our friends at NBAstore.eu, Europe's official online NBA store. We've teamed up with them to give you 15% off all orders with the code DCPOD15. It's a new season, meaning new players, new jerseys and classic drops, so why not cop something fresh? Whatever you need, from the current night jerseys to hardwood classics to stunt stocks and Spalding balls, NBAstore.eu has you covered like a Rudy Gobert weak-side rotation. Offer excludes sale and clearance items, but what are you waiting for? Head to NBAstore.eu now and use the code DCPOD15. Okay, I'm going to start this bit with my 4th overreaction statement based on the early games, and you can grade it again 1 to 10. The Utah Jazz are 3-1, but having been perennially underrated throughout his career, it turns out Mike Conley is actually overrated.
Oh, I'm going to go bang in the middle on that and go with
I'm
going to go with a 5.
Okay.
I've never been the biggest Mike Conley fan, but I respect him. So I'm just going to go right bang in the middle with that.
What is it about him that you...
He's just never stood out to me. And he was always down there in Memphis just picking up these monster contracts. And I couldn't understand why, but I think it's probably more so that it's the things that he does off the court and in the locker room. And in terms of pulling the team together, that's probably where he's more valuable. I do think he was a great pickup for Utah. I think they needed, a breath of fresh air, especially at that position. And I think he's, in terms of a vet, he's the perfect vet because he's been in the league for so long. And he's not a guy who's out there to get his stats. I think he's at a point now in his career where he just wants to win. I think he's mature enough, and I think he's got the skill set to do a lot with this team. And he's got some great pieces on that team, to do some things with. Utah's a fun team to watch, man. I'm very excited to see how they do this season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they're going to be one of the top teams in the conference. And that's probably an obvious statement. Conley, I think he's the ideal guy for them. He, where Rubio was perhaps not the best offensive partner in terms of what he provided in the backcourt with Donovan Mitchell, but here we've got Conley who can shoot, and I think he's going to get past this rough start. He can play off the ball. He's going to share the load with Mitchell so that he's not overworked like he was at the start of last year. And I don't think he's a step back on defense either. He still can contribute on that end of the floor. Intrigued to see what he can do with them. Intrigued to see what they can do as a whole. They're going to be a monster once they start clicking. Got another listener question from Ross McLeod. So being a Toronto guy, how proud are you of the Raptors' achievements last season, and how well has former BBL coach Nick Nurse taken to being an NBA head coach?
Listen, Ross, I've waited 25 long years for this one, baby. I'm super proud of the Raptors' achievements. How could I not be? This has been what we've been waiting for, since the Raptors have entered the league. I was just a young kid when they came in, and I just kind of getting into basketball. So for me, when the Raptors came into the league, it was like the perfect thing, NBA team in my own hometown. And then, I've been with them ever since, been following them ever since. I've been there through all the hard times, from the good times and the hard times, from Damon Stoudemire to getting Vince and T-Mac, and to us chasing Vince out of Toronto, to Chris Bosh, to Andre Bargnani, to Kobe dropping 80 plus on us.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you can't respect all the bad times that we've been through, you can't respect the good times we've been through. And I think that as a Raptors fan, we'll cherish this kind of so much more, because it just feels like we've worked for it. And we were the underdog pick going in. No one picked us at the beginning of the season to even be close to it.
Yeah, anyone who says they did is just they're not being honest there.
I mean, until that mid-season trade when we got Gasol and they started putting more pieces together, that's when I kind of saw, okay, maybe we can make a run at it. But before that, no one really saw it coming. And like I said, we will cherish it more because and I don't mean to wane on the Warriors, but as opposed to building a super team over, at the beginning of a season, we kind of built this throughout a season, and, Masai Ujiri kind of concocted this thing, and then we were able to make this playoff push, and it was so exciting to watch, and I couldn't be prouder of the team. And then also to have, Nick Nurse, who's, I've never personally met him, but obviously being a former BBL coach, BBL legend, and winning some championships over here, so cool to have that connection to the club as well. And just to watch, I keep tabs on the Raptors a lot, and I watch a lot of their, they have a series called Open Gym, and it follows them around, and you get to see a lot of the interviews and just the perspectives from inside the locker rooms and stuff. And I just feel like he coaches the right way, and I feel like he's more of like a player's coach. Really happy for him that he was able to bring the championship back and do it in his first year as a head coach. Like how tough is that?
Yeah, and having the sort of the gumption and the sort of the confidence to try things that hadn't really been seen in the NBA, like the box and one, to just, even though it was thrown out for a few minutes at a time, it just disrupted things just enough.
Yeah, 100%. I think he's such a good motivator. He's great, and I think he's a good guy with people and a good guy with players, and keeping guys locked in and letting guys know that how hard they have to play on every possession and that type of thing. So
the connection with the UK and the Raptors is stronger than a lot of people realise. Obviously, people talk about Nick Nurse and the BBL. Masai was over in the BBL as well.
Yeah.
OG Anunoby, obviously, he couldn't play in the playoffs because of his appendectomy, but again, London-born, here till he was 2, so we're claiming him. And I think it was is it one of the head physical trainer? Is a Scottish guy.
Yeah.
So it's.
And they have also just signed Fab Flournoy.
Yeah, of course.
From Newcastle Eagles. So there's lots of BBL connections there.
I meant to ask, actually, with Fab's departure, are you now the longest active member of a BBL franchise? Because you've been there 10 years now at Sheffield?
This is my 11th season with the show.
11th season.
Yeah.
So you've got to be up there.
Yeah, definitely. I'm just off the top of my head, Gareth Murray plays for Glasgow, and Andy Thompson, who plays for Leicester Riders, have both been in the league as long as I have, but they both left and did stints in France. So in terms of active consecutive years, and that would be a good question for Dan Rutledge, the BBL voice of the league and stats guy. That'd be a good question for him. But yeah, I believe I'd be in the finalists, or if not the longest serving.
I will find out and confirm.
Can we feel like a dinosaur over here?
Well, I'll carry on then along that route. Speaking of dinosaurs, how do you feel about the OG unis being back?
Love them, man. I remember when they first came out in '95, and as a kid I liked them. But I remember just hearing the buzz around the league and stuff, and everyone would be making fun of guys on the team, like, oh, what's that, Barney? And, why you got a big purple dinosaur on you? But I think we were just setting trends. We were ahead of our time, man. And, I love that. I just love everything. I love all the imagery and the marketing that the Sharks have been doing with bringing back the old logos and kind of paying homage to this 25 years that we've been in the league and that the whole 90s vibe with it. And hands down, my favorite NBA jersey of all time. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased, but there's a few teams in the league that are bringing back the 90s vibe this year, and I really like it. It's pretty cool, just obviously growing up in that generation and stuff. So it's cool to see. Absolutely.
I think I've still got my purple dinosaur champion shorts from back in the day.
I got a snapback, an OG Raptor snapback somewhere at my dad's house.
Well, these shorts will be perfect now as well because they'll be super short, which is all the all the rage again.
Yeah. I get older, the shorts get shorter.
Yeah. I remember because I wanted to get the Vince jersey as well, but they didn't come out over here for the first year because either they didn't expect them to be that big or there was a lag in producing them in Europe. So I ended up getting in his second season when they released the refresh jersey that he won the dunk contest in. I've still got that somewhere as well. You obviously you're a Torontonian, is that right? Is that how you say it?
Torontonian, yeah.
Torontonian, there you go. I anglicised it too much with the Tunian, made it sound a bit Geordie.
Yeah.
after you left college, you worked out with the Raptors, didn't you?
I did indeed. Yeah. I did a pre-draft workout with the Raptors. Dante Green from Syracuse was in my workout, and Roy Hibbert from Georgetown, who went on and played for Pacers, I believe, was at my workout. And at that workout, there was a lot of coaches there, and Leo Routens, who is now a commentator for the Raptors, but at the time was head coach of Team Canada, was there. Unfortunately, I didn't get picked for the Raptors. It was an amazing opportunity, and thank you to the Toronto Raptors for giving me that opportunity. But I got picked up for the Team Canada developmental team because of that, because Leo was there and he saw me working out and he saw my potential. So I got picked up by him, and then Leo introduced me to a friend who was an agent, and that agent got me my first job out in Europe. So shout out to Leo Routens and Bernie Lee, who's actually Jimmy Butler's agent as well.
Wow. That's quite amazing. You mentioned you were a Raptors fan from day one. It was sort of the time you got into basketball. So what was sort of going through your mind when it's like, I'm working out for my hometown team, who I've been a fan of since their inception in the league?
It was like, honestly, it was like I was just kind of floating around the whole day, because I went down. It's obviously the Scotiabank Center at the time was the Air Canada Center, so ACC. So I got down there, and like I'm going through like this like little side entrance, and you're going through like these back alleyways, and then they take you up to the back then the practice facility was in the actual ACC, so it was on the 100 level, and then there was this little random side door, and all of a sudden then you're on this court, and there's a huge weight room, and it's like built into the ACC. Really, really cool. And then I'm in there, and there's all the Raptors assistant coaches are in there, and well, the first they took us to the locker room, and so I'm sitting in the locker room, like in the actual Raptors locker room, and they giving us all like the gear and stuff, and it was just like, I was just like, what is going on right now?
That's amazing.
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
it was truly an honor. And it was also just cool to get that insight and just kind of see how that half lives, and just how what the setup was, and everything, man. Like I had access to all their trainers and just like the whole support system. Those guys are truly blessed. But yeah, it was a great experience for me. And then now seeing that the Raptors won it, just like, icing on top.
Absolutely. That's incredible. I hope you kept all that gear, or they let you keep all that gear.
Yeah, I still got one of the shirts. I still work out in it. It's been through a few washes. It's fading quickly. I need to go and I need to probably hang it up or something.
Yeah, amazing. We had another question which links into this. It's from another of my co-hosts, Hugh Hopkins. Are there any BBL or British players that could make an NBA roster? Obviously, we've got OG Anunoby, although the claim that he's British is a little tenuous. Cavell Bigby-Williams was waived by the Pels on the 19th of October. We had Luke Nelson a couple of years played for the Clippers Summer League team. Are there any, we sort of look at like the BBL as being a different level, but how close is it realistically? I mean, the top level BBL players, are they far off being able to make an NBA roster?
I think to be an NBA player, it's not always how good you are. It's that old saying, like, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I think a lot of things to get into an NBA team and to get into that opportunity in that situation, is a lot of things have to go right for you. You've got to be in the right college system, and you have to have a coach that wants you to get there, and then you have to have people pulling strings for this, and you got to get the right agent, and you can't screw up off the court. You got to make sure you get your grades and like there's so many good things. So saying that, I do think that there's guys in our league that given the right opportunity and the right chance, the right circumstances, they would have given themselves a good chance to get to the league. In terms of naming actual individual players, I mean, the biggest difference between the NBA and the rest of the leagues in the world is obviously skill level is the first thing, but then it's size and then athleticism. You're not, so I think, in our league, in the British Basketball League, if you're a guard, and you break down your defender, after that, the help side comes and you got like one other athletic guy you got to get by. In the NBA, you break down your defender, you got to get by like 2 or 3 other athletic guys to get to the rim.
Yeah.
So that's the hard part. So, I mean, if you look at our league, Justin Robinson, league MVP, I think he can shoot the ball really well. He's a great facilitator. He sees the floor great. I think in terms of NBA, if he got to the NBA, would he be able to defend on the other end? I don't know. The guards there are pretty big, so that would probably be something to take to heart. We haven't played all the teams in the league this year, so I don't really know what else is around, but, off the top of my head, you look at the 2 Latvian twins that they're down on the Royals. I mean, they played in the EuroLeague. I mean, they're probably past it now, about 10 years past it now. But in their prime, they played in the EuroLeague. So those are 2 guys that potentially could have played over there. And then if you stick with the Royals, you look at last season, like NBA, Matthew Bryan and Manning and Ashley Hamilton. Those are 2 guys that probably have the size and the strength that they potentially could have been in the running to make a roster. I think in terms of British players, you got OG in the league right now, and obviously I'm a Raptors fan and I've been cheering for him. He was out injured and now he's back, and I think he's got a really good opportunity in front of him, and he's a guy, if he does kind of come back and embrace his British heritage, he's a guy that can kind of, fill that void that Luol Deng is leaving and hopefully be a guy that the kids in the UK can look up to.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we as a country missed the trick with Luol significantly in terms of capitalising on his status and sort of driving basketball in the UK.
I agree.
In terms of what sort of things can basketball, be it the NBA, be it the BBL, what can they do differently to engage more fans in the UK? Because as far back as I can remember, we talk about how it's the second most played sport amongst under 18s, but then 18 comes and they drop off, and there's not really a lot of. I don't know. It still seems to, in terms of market size in the UK, the NBA has a 1% share, which is tiny. And obviously, everything is football, and if it's not football, it's rugby or cricket. Is there anything you think the sport can do differently to grow?
Yeah, I mean I've been here for 11 years now, or 10 years, going on 11. So obviously, the BBL and basketball in the UK is always just looked as a growing sport. And it is. And I think, especially in the last 5 years, I've seen it with my own eyes growing and getting bigger. I think now the information age and social media and especially, Instagram and highlights are getting put up way quicker than anything, So I think that the engagement with basketball is going up. Obviously, the NBA, they do the NBA London game. They're doing the NBA Paris game. I think, they got to keep doing that and hopefully do more. You look at the NFL and, they used to start off with like just one game over in London, and now it just seems like every other weekend there's an NFL.
Yeah.
So I think if we could get more people engaged on it, I think that getting it back on Sky Sports is absolutely huge. Yeah. And you look at the success that we had doing those games last season after the All-Star break and leading into the playoffs. And now the momentum going into this season, they're doing a Tuesday YouTube show. They're putting, I think, twice as many games on, and then they're doing NBA Saturdays and Sundays, which will be, huge for the sport. Maybe the NBA looking at doing a junior league, or putting money into some sort of development league over here, which I think they do. They do something with that.
There's a junior NBA. I think it peaked at about 20 localized leagues in the UK last year. So and that's in conjunction with Basketball England and the likes, and it's good that they are sort of still investing in that sort of grassroots level basketball, not just in the UK but across Europe.
Yeah. 100%. I agree. I think with the UK, I mean, I look at like Toronto and Canada as like an example, because Canada is like, you know, you look at the UK and you like football is king here. Like, you know, everybody has a football team. Everybody is just like, and in Canada, it's hockey. Like hockey is king. Like everybody lives and breathes it. But like we've been able to like overcome that and change the tide a little bit. And one, it was, I mean, the advantage that we had in Canada was obviously an NBA team two NBA teams came to Canada, and then obviously one stayed. And then the other thing was we had a superstar named Vince Carter come in, and that was a huge thing. You know, you look at all those guys that have come out of the draft in recent years, all the Canadians, you know, like Wiggins and et cetera. And they all say that, you know, Vince Carter was like one of the main reasons. And when he won that dunk competition, and that was one of the main reasons why they picked up a basketball. So I do think that, we kind of alluded to earlier that, like, you know, basketball needs kind of their savior, you know, the basketball Jesus of England to kind of to kind of come and resurrect it. It's the best way, you know, to get kids inspired is if they're looking up to a role model like that. Saying that though, I think the BBL is making strides, and putting all our games on YouTube this season has been a
great move,
a massive step in the right direction. I think having it on a pay-per-view subscription service that was a good step in the right direction. But now having it on YouTube is an even bigger one. I think the numbers aren't going to lie with that, and hopefully we can keep pushing that out and keep growing it and getting more eyes on the sport. The All-Stars tournament that we do in London, this is the third year running. That's been great. Obviously it's on Sky Sports. So, you know, such a massive platform, just getting the sport out there to an audience that's not particularly familiar with the sport. And then getting all these teams that they might not know about out there is a huge thing.
You mentioned All-Stars. How difficult is that as a player to switch from traditional basketball that you've grown up playing to this sort of sped up version, essentially, where you know the timeouts are gone, fouls are shots, not free, fouls are points, aren't they? And it's a lot quicker. In fact, I remember the first year it came out, I sat there watching it. I felt like I'd been watching tennis because it was just so quick, and you know you had the buzzers to create additional points. Does that take much of an adjustment in how you approach a game?
Yeah, it's like a circus out there, man. And the shot clock is shorter as well, so it's just like everything is just super amped up. We actually found that when we slowed games down, it was, you know, easier to control, but you don't get, you only get one good look at the basket, and you pretty much got to take the first shot that you get. And it is that golden buzzer when you for the next, whatever, 60 or 2 minutes, the points are doubled for the team that hits the golden buzzer. And that's such a, like, if you hit 2 or 3 threes in that time, then, you know, it's over. So, that was a huge adjustment. And for that, seeing that that's the only basketball event that they see out of England on TV, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but because it's not your traditional basketball, it's more like whatever. It's like similar to like what rugby sevens or something like that, or five-a-side football. It's like a kind of condensed or smaller version of the game. But just having it on Sky Sports and them backing it, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. Couple more questions before I let you go. I appreciate you've given up a lot of time for this. At One Take J, who is Jason Henley, who's the MC for London Lions and the guy in charge of the Regal Basketball in London, which is a great place. asks, what two main things would you bring into the BBL from the NBA?
Cheerleaders and NBA budget.
NBA budget. That's fair. I like that. You interpreted it totally differently to me, and I started trying to think of rules, and it wasn't an NBA rule, but what I'd quite like to see in general implemented across basketball throughout the world is the FIBA goaltending rule. Where if as soon as it's touched the rim, you can get rid of that.
Yeah. Immediately I start thinking of the like the other stuff to help grow the game. But that is an interesting take. It is strange. I always think about basketball, and you look at like the college, the NCAA system, the NBA, and then FIBA rules, and it is one of the only sports in the world where you have like this one game and there's like 3 different sets of rules. I do think that there needs to be efforts made into like standardizing the rules of basketball across the board.
Absolutely.
Even in the NBA, like the court is different like size to, the 3-point line is further out. And so it's just that is interesting. But yeah, that is one of the rules that I actually do like in Europe or in FIBA rules, is that you can knock the ball off the rim after it's been shot. I'd love to see that. But in terms of like what things that NBA do that we could do in the BBL, definitely the entertainment side of things. I know I said cheerleaders like a joke, but like there could be more stuff, more entertainment type stuff for certain teams that happen during game days. Some clubs in the league are doing a good job, but at other places I see things where I'm like, okay, this could be done a little bit better. I think getting our league back on a primetime TV station would be a great thing, and then you could really start to ramp that up and do like a roundup magazine show or something. Just get more people invested into basketball in this country and get more people watching it. And then, you could get, I always look at the TNT show with the NBA and you've got like a panel of like 4 legends sitting on a table. And I think that's something where we don't see that much of that in the BBL, is like paying homage to ex-players and legend players and having them, coming back to the games. And you don't see too much of that. Like, I mean, I can only think of myself and Anthony Rowe that are really on the broadcast side that have done sideline stuff. I could be wrong on that, but
he does a lot now. Anthony does. I know him from Plymouth days, but he seems to try. His career was shorter than he wanted it to be through knee injuries, but he's transitioned really well into an on-screen talent.
Yeah, he does pretty much all the Leicester home games, and he's done some of the finals and some of the cup stuff. So I think you need more of that. You need more of these familiar faces that people remember, and brings that nostalgia back into the league. And then, I don't know, you look at, the NBA does like NBA Cares, which is, massive and giving back to the communities. And they have different superstars from around the league kind of taking the lead on whatever it is, handing out food to the homeless or running basketball clinics in deprived areas. And you always get really, really good PR and good press out of that. So I think maybe if the BBL kind of concocted a similar thing to that could be beneficial. Whether they have the resources or the budget to do that, that's another story. But, yeah, the NBA right now is, I would say is probably the hottest league in the world. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned from what they're doing.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's some really good points you raised there. The final question we had was from Jermaine Allen, which we've kind of answered the first half of it, which was, what is your view on the state of British basketball? I think you covered that quite nicely. He also asked, why are we so far down in the rankings as a nation? And obviously, GB at the minute are ranked 41st, falling from 21st in the previous rankings. What do you think the country needs to do differently to improve as on in terms of in international competition? Obviously, the women have been done brilliantly. You know, they did fantastic in Eurobasket this summer. They've made the Japan pre-qualifying tournament. That same level of success hasn't translated over to the men's team for a whole host of reasons. But what's your take on it?
I think that you need to build a consistency and a culture, and I think that starts at the top. I think that the governing bodies, I think, it's always kind of, the UK is an interesting place because you have these like 3-4 different countries all wrapped up into the GB setup, and then there's a different setup for the GB. So it's much different from like other like for me coming from Canada, it was just very simple. It was just like, you know, there's one governing body and then that. So you have all these different governing bodies that are working together, but they're not. And then there's a GB governing body over that. So I mean, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody because I don't know enough about it, but having consistency on those management levels will trickle down, and then having a coaching setup that you know, where you can, instead of like switching your coach every like 3 years or like 2 years, having like a consistent coach that can help start building, you know, a core group of guys and a system. And I know that they signed former Sheffield Shark and my former teammate Nate Rankin, absolute legend, last summer. And I would hope that they would keep him on so that he can help to start build that culture, because I think he is a great guy for the job. Obviously, I've played with him, and man, I learned so much from him, playing from him. And then, you know, he was played for the GB setup for, you know, probably at least 10 years, I would say. So I think he's the perfect guy for the job. And then after that, it's his job to find that group of guys that are going to commit to going to it every summer. And then it's up to GB to setting up games, and even if it's just friendly games, but you got to get these guys on the court together and get experience playing together. That's the only way, you know, you can't just expect to throw a random group of guys together for a one-off tournament and expect good things to happen. Like these things need to be built up over multiple summers of the same guys getting together and building something good together.
It'll be interesting to see whether they can keep Nate in that role, given his cunt and charge responsibilities, and then the sort of the window system that FIBA seem to be sticking with. But I agree 100% there needs to be consistency and commitment, and it just feels like that's been lacking, unfortunately, for whatever reason. Final thing then, let's go. Lots and lots of games this week and this weekend. What is your choice for game of the week?
Game of the week? I really like that Rockets Brooklyn Nets game that's coming up on Friday.
Yep.
Rockets still trying to find themselves. Westbrook's there, Harden, you know, I think they're slowly starting to figure it out. And then Brooklyn, you know, there's been a lot of rumblings about Kyrie already.
Yeah.
And, you know, he came out and had that 50-point game, which was absolutely incredible. But then,
do you think that final shot was intentional with the and one street ball move, which kind of
I don't know what the hell. I was just like, it didn't look like he tripped, but I couldn't see him actually trying to pull that off in a game-winning shot situation.
And it did look a little bit clumsy for a move that would be as slick as that if you were going to bust it out. There's no way you would try that for the first time there.
Pull that off way better. I think he probably went to do a move and then hesitated at the last second, and then ended up in this weird situation where he was just like, okay, I'm going to try and spin, and then it turned into a jump. So, I mean, it was a pleasure to watch him and get that 50-point win, or 50 points, but then, you know, you don't pull out the win for your team. And then there's already, you know, you're looking in the media and you're seeing, he's bipolar. He's not happy one day. He's this, that. So, I mean, that kind of stigma has been following him around for the last 2 seasons. So it'll be interesting to see if he can pull himself out of that and get a win.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice of game. High expectations for the Rockets and high pressure for them actually in terms of their window of championship opportunity. And then the Nets, perhaps the expectations on them are a little higher this season, but they're only going to ramp up as Kevin Durant approaches health next year, and so Kyrie's going to have to get used to it. I Kyrie intrigues me a lot. Incredible talent. Think he's fantastic, but I just don't think he's the kind of guy who should be a number one option, if that makes sense, just because he's a ball dominant point guard, and there are 4 other pairs of hands that need to be involved in the ball if you're gonna get all the way to the finals.
I completely agree with that, and we saw what happened last year with the Celtics when he was, when he was on the court, and then when he wasn't on the court, we saw 2 different Celtics teams. So
absolutely. Well, yeah, it's going to be interesting. Okay, thank you very much for your time, Mike, and thank you to everyone for listening. As I said at the start, if you're not already, make sure you're following at Double Clutch UK on all social media channels. Hit review us on all whatever. There's too many podcast providers now. Whatever podcast provider you listen through, make sure you rate and review us. It really helps. If you've got any questions, anything you want us to cover in the future, hit us up at admin@doubleclutch.uk. You can follow Mike at MikeTuck15. Mike, when are you next on Sky Sports?
I don't know yet. It probably will be within the next month. Hopefully sometime in November or early December.
And you're going to be involved in Heat Check as well at some point, I believe, which is their new show.
They're going to be. That's going to be on Tuesdays. They'll be doing mostly Heat Checks until after the All-Star break, and then they'll start picking up on NBA Sundays and in-studio stuff. So I'll keep you in the loop with all that for sure.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to seeing you back on screen soon. Thank you very much for listening, everyone.